Welcome to the Sourcing Hero podcast, produced by Una, a group purchasing organization that empowers sourcing heroes, and Art of Procurement, the world's largest procurement podcast network. I'm your host, Kelly Barner. The goal of the Sourcing Hero podcast is to capture the epic stories of people who are rising up and beating the odds to create exceptional value within procurement, directly from those heroes themselves. Today, my guest here on the Sourcing Hero podcast is Keri Peña. Like a lot of us, Keri did not start her career in procurement. She actually started out in IT, but she didn't work in procurement for long before she was completely hooked. Now, Keri reached out and offered to tell her story and share her experience, partially as a means of helping other procurement professionals succeed in the field, and also partly because doing so is fun. So first note, be more like Keri. We're also really glad to announce that Keri is one of 2 nationwide finalists for the ProcureCon Rising Star program. So we have actual stardom in our midst here today on the Sourcing Hero podcast. Hi, Keri. I'm so glad you're with us.
Hi, thanks, Kelly. That's a great introduction. I loved it.
I wish I had like an Oscar or something to hand you. I feel like there should be more ovation and applause. So I shared a little bit at a high level about your professional journey in my intro, but what else do you think it's helpful for people to know about your experience?
So with my experience, like you said, I started in IT. I was in IT for probably 16 years before I found procurement. And so it was like a light went off. It was like, I should have been doing this my whole life. How did I not know that this was a discipline? Like, it's been so much fun and it's so rewarding. And when I was 40, when I found it. So at this point in my life, it's finally like, oh, I finally know what I should be doing.
And thank goodness you found it. You know, so many people take these sort of curvy, twisty, like wrong end, back up in their career. And yet it's so amazing how many people follow that path into procurement and then instantly say, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, I found my home. I found the place that I belong. And a lot of that ends up being about the relationships we realize we can forge once we're here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you and I initially talked, you shared a story that illustrates the kind of relationships procurement can build with suppliers. I wonder if you'd be willing to share that story on the record here today, sort of as a way of, again, letting people get to know you a little bit, but also to set the stage about your philosophy on procurement.
Okay. Are you referring to the story of the broken foot?
I am indeed referring to the story of the broken foot.
Okay. So I was on my way to negotiate a cybersecurity software agreement. It was during COVID, so we were all working from home. But I still like that personal touch. So we went to meet for lunch. I was walking from the parking lot to the sidewalk up to the restaurant. And there was kind of a lip that was covered by grass that I didn't see. And of course, I was dressed really fancy. I had on flip-flops and ripped up jeans and probably right? So I'm walking, I trip. My flip-flops betrayed me, got all tangled up. And immediately, everything I'm carrying just flies off. My laptop went into my stomach and impaled my stomach.
Oh.
My left foot immediately swole up. It looked like it was broken. My right foot, right where my big toe is at the base of my big toe, broke. My ring finger fractured. My hand like kind of jarred up into my elbow, giving me nerve damage. I mean, it was a just horrific fall. But I did what anyone else would do at the time and started looking around to see, oh my God, all this is so embarrassing. So I'm laying there, people are coming to my rescue, and all of a sudden I just feel like I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick. And she's like, no, if you're going to get sick, just get sick on the sidewalk. And I'm like, no, I cannot get sick on the sidewalk. So somehow, I don't know if it's like being a mother or what, but the strength, all this took the strength I had to drag that dead leg into the bathroom, to do what I needed to do. I come out, I'm still disoriented. This lady is with me. She's so sweet. She's trying to call everybody. I can't think. I'm like delirious. So she says to me, is there anybody I can call? I'm like having her call my husband. I'm calling people that I know that live in the area because I'm thinking, how am I going to get to the hospital? Like, I need to go to the hospital because there is something seriously wrong with my foot. So she's like, we have to call an ambulance. I'm like, no, please do not call an ambulance. No, it's going to be as much as a trip to Hawaii. So I was like, no, please don't call an ambulance. And as I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm here to meet a vendor. Like and here I'm going to have to tell this vendor like what happened. I'm crying. I'm just a total mess. And luckily I had a relationship in place with this vendor. She was like, oh my gosh, Keri, what happened? She took me to the emergency room. She was yelling at the staff to give me pain medicine. She was making sure I got x-rays. She took me to the CVS to get my pain medicine. She made sure I ate. She got me something to eat and drove me 40 minutes to my house, got me upstairs in my bed, and then had her husband come pick her up and drive back. And that's the kind of relationship that I have with my vendors.
And if you can find a supplier to do that for you, I mean, there are wonderful people in the world, right? Mm-hmm. But if nothing else, it sort of breaks down all of the stereotypes or the divides that we think about in terms of, well, procurement's over here and suppliers are over there. Now, I do need to ask, and I have the benefit of experience now, because the last time you shared this story with me, I listened to most of it with my hands over my face, because I'm thinking, first of all, that is so something I would do. I would completely fall down on my way to an important meeting. But also, you empathize in listening. You experience going through it. How much of the relationships that you've been able to build is about your approach to procurement? And how much of it do you think is just raw Keri about you as an individual?
So I think I'm more extroverted, introverted, if that's a thing. So like, I am not the person who's going to be talking at parties. I'm not the person who's going to chat anyone up, but I genuinely care about people and I want to help them. So it's a little bit of that. And then it's also, I started my IT career with a lot of men, and I grew up with 4 brothers. So it was easy for me to connect with them because I spoke their language. Yeah. And then once I thought, I have some really good ideas, and then I started to speak on them and they agreed with me that they were good ideas, I started to get self-confidence and self-worth. And then I started talking and speaking up. And then of course you couldn't shut me up. Right. So, so that's where that comes from. And it's not something that's natural to me. I really do need to try, but at the same time, I generally care about people and relationships. And I don't want the relationship I have with my suppliers just to be transactional.
No, definitely not. And yet there's a journey, because at some point that representative or that account manager is just a name on LinkedIn or is just an email address. And it does take time to forge that relationship. How do you go from, okay, this is the identity of the individual that I'm going to be working with, to really starting to lay the groundwork to have that deeper relationship?
It's as simple as a phone call. I talk to my stakeholders. I know what they need, and they'll give me a name or a number, and I'll call that person. And the next thing you know, and like I said, it's very organic. It's genuine because I truly care about the people I'm working with on both sides, internal stakeholders and vendors. And I'll just say, hey, this is Keri. I'm with, the company that I work with. I need X, Y, and Z from you. I'm completely transparent. And then the next thing you know, it just kind of organically flows into, I know how many kids they have, what sports they're in. And then I was talking to this one person, and next thing you know, he knows some of the same people I know, and they play euchre together, so it's like, and then we're just bonded. So then when it comes time to negotiate, he knows that I generally care about him and what he has to go through on the sales side. And I know he's going to help me when it comes to savings and risks on my side.
Have you ever met with someone who is actually resistant to the idea of relationship? Like they're willing to do sort of the transactional table stakes, going back and forth via email to resolve the details kind of a thing, but they're not open to forming that deeper bond?
So I've run into this only once, and it bothers me because I can't get past it. But it has not been on the vendor side, but internal stakeholder. I have tried all the tricks I have in my bag. I've met with them. I've said, okay, what do you need? What's keeping you up at night? How can I help you? What's your budget look like? How can I help you reduce costs and get savings to your budget? They tell me I deliver. Sometimes I over deliver. So I know that trust is there. They can trust me. But no matter what I did, I could not get that relationship I wanted from that person. And then I kind of realized no one else did. And so it was okay.
Mm.
As long as and regardless that I have that relationship, I'm still going to deliver for him. But it's not, it's like I said, it's awkward because I've never had someone be so resistant. But it doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do.
Absolutely. Now, 12 minutes into knowing you, anybody that's meeting you through this podcast can clearly tell you have a great sense of humor and you bring that to bear in your work and in these relationships and in communications. How important do you think a sense of humor is to being in the professional world today?
Oh my gosh, there's so much that divides us as a country right now. I have to find humor, and I find humor in everything. Sometimes my wit and my quick wit and my humor is maybe not what is needed in the moment, but I can't help myself. And I just think that's what everybody needs. And it helps build that relationship when people know that like you're fun, you're not serious. And procurement is a serious discipline, but it's so much fun. And just having those relationships and laughing, it just goes a long way.
No, it definitely does. And I've now had this experience, right? I think the day you and I talked, we'd been in the Zoom meeting for 90 seconds. And I thought to myself, oh, we're best friends now. This is great. And there's so much that we can do when we work together and sort of connecting on that human level. It makes a lot of things possible. I personally think factoring in humor makes it all a lot more fun. But that definitely shouldn't suggest that you take any of this lightly. So when we had connected before, you also talked about the importance of much more serious things like empathy, transparency, trust, and just generally being genuine and authentic with other people. Building on humor, in its right place in conversations. Why are some of these other things, these very commonly talked about, but maybe not often enough practiced soft skills, so critical, specifically in procurement?
Well, I think that goes back to, at the end of the day, it's, it's the salesperson's life. It's their quotas. It's if they're going to make their numbers for the quarter. I want to make that happen if I can, because you're helping me. And I want you to know that I'm genuine. I care about you and what's going on with you. And the same for my stakeholder. I want the best job I can do for you. So having that relationship, and it's like you said, it's genuine. I really care. I'm empathetic to what's going on both sides. And I try to do what's best for the company and the vendor. If they can see right through that, they can tell if you're just wanting to like bully them around to get a better cost, or just being salesy. That's not how I am. Like, I generally care about you as a person. I care about your kids. I care about what's going on with you. And how can I make your life better by doing this job?
Now, let's say we have somebody listening in that's either an introvert like me, or early in their career, or maybe they're shy, and they can see the benefit of taking this kind of relational approach, but it might not come to them naturally and they'd like to sort of get started. What advice would you offer up to anybody who's trying to get more comfortable in building these relationships with suppliers?
Mm-hmm. So I was there when I first started procurement. I was right there. I was like, oh, this makes me nervous, because I was coming in and I was having to set up meetings with vice presidents and senior leadership. And I'm like, how am I going to relate to them? How are they going to take me seriously? So the most important thing I did was immediately set up either biweekly or monthly calls or meetings, face-to-face meetings, and understand again, what's keeping you up at night. What are your constraints? What can I do to help you? Because I have an enterprise view of what's going on in the company. I can consolidate vendors. I can find savings that they might not know about. So I do those things, and then I build the trust, and then we have that relationship. They know they can count on you. And that's where you start. You just have to start with that first initial meeting, be empathetic, be genuine, and let them know that you're there to help and relieve some of the burdens that they have.
Now, as we start to sort of wind down our time together, I want to take you through a tradition we have here at the Sourcing Hero podcast. So I'm going to give you 2 questions, Keri. You can pick either one, and there are no wrong answers. So your choices are, either what does the idea of a sourcing hero mean to you? Or if you want to think about this a little bit more broadly, what does heroism look like in a business context?
Oh, I think it's easy for me. It's the sourcing hero. Everyone that works in sourcing is a hero. Every day we pull off miracles for the stakeholders and the vendors. And I don't think we get enough credit for that inside the organizations, but that's how we are. I mean, we are just relieving people's burdens. We're helping them get things that they never thought they could with a little amount of money, So I think that we're all heroes, and I just think we don't get enough credit for that inside organizations.
Absolutely. No. Well, we're all pulling for you, right? We want you in this Rising Star program. So everybody's cheering for you. It's a wonderful thought that everybody is stepping up and doing these heroic acts. I do think there's an awful lot of really hard work that happens within procurement and sourcing, and even on the side of suppliers, right? That doesn't get recognized, but
Right.
It's incredibly difficult to pull it off. And we have to put a lot of ourselves as people on the line to make it possible. So absolutely, that is a great call out when it comes to being a sourcing hero. If people are just meeting you for the first time and have fallen in love with you while listening to this conversation, as I did in 90 seconds back when we first talked, what is the best way for people to reach out and connect with you?
Definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. Really easy to find, Keri Peña. And I'd be happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, Keri, thank you for being so open. Thank you for being so willing to share your perspective. And thank you for being so you here on the Sourcing Hero podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast. Join us again next time for more true stories of sourcing and business heroism performed by your colleagues and peers. Look for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, don't forget, sourcing heroism is taking place all around us every day. Keep your eyes open and you're bound to see it. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelly Barner. Stay well and always remember that you can be a hero too.